Welcome to today's show. We're really excited to talk about food today, food as medicine. Now, you might be wondering, us being myofascial release therapists and physical therapists, what that really has to do with anything. But if you're wondering that question, then this episode is probably for you because everything that our bodies experience, whether it's the physical work that we're doing or the stretches or the what have you, the way that we feed it, either with food or with thoughts or even just the environment we're in, every single thing that our bodies experience is part of our health. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to you. But let's explore that a little bit today and talk about how we can improve the food that we're putting in our bodies.
Absolutely. So, when we're talking about food, we're talking about your fuel, right? We're talking about what your body uses to create the emotions, the sensations, the physical feelings in your body. If you put garbage in,
You get garbage out.
exactly. So, what this means is you need good quality food. We need to get good hydration, good quality hydration. And we need those things to get to the target tissue.
Mhm.
And that's where myofascial release can play a role because what we're working on is dehydrated, restricted fascia that has been glued down by the imbalances in the subconscious bracing patterns and holding patterns by gentle hold, by gentle stretch, by waiting at the barrier for that melt to occur around 5 minutes or longer. You create the environment for cellular communication to be reestablished, for the ease of things to pass from one cell membrane through that extracellular space to the other cell on the other side that's desperately needing that nutrition.
Yeah, and if you remember what we've been sharing in all of our episodes to this point, is that fascia is the support system, the scaffolding for every single cell in the body. It's not just, for your muscles and your bones and your joints. It supports all of your internal organs, your digestive system being one of them. And so if we have restrictions in the fascia that's supporting the digestive system, there's a whole myriad of symptoms that you can experience that might be classified as things like, ulcerative colitis or irritable bowel syndrome or any kind of like leaky gut or food intolerance, something like that. And it could also have a structural component on a cellular level that can be addressed through myofascial release. And what we've seen when we work on clients and they come in for one issue that has nothing to do with any of their digestive health, that sometimes their digestive system symptoms, they just get better. And it's because we are releasing the tension and lines of pull in other areas of the body that are also pulling into the digestive system.
The other side of this is stress and the stress physiology. The major hormone for stress physiology in your body is cortisol, which is an acetylcholine based chemical, a neurotransmitter that comes from your pituitary gland. And without getting more technical than that, essentially, torsion in the system, in either the pelvis or the skull, will affect the opposite end. And often, when there is tension that's affecting mobility in the nervous system, that's now closing down on the natural motion of what's called the sphenoid. It's the bone in the middle of the skull, it's the linchpin everything's attached to. It actually affects how your body is releasing pituitary gland hormones. So these are the thyroid hormones as well as the precursors to cortisol that are now determining how you're actually absorbing carbs, fats, and proteins, how you're able to utilize and burn those fuels.
So it's all connected. Everything from the structure of the digestive system and the health of that to the health of your mental health essentially, and how your brain is producing these neurotransmitters that signal the body to perform in the way that we want it to perform. And then, of course, what we're putting into our bodies and the signals that we give our bodies and how we expect it to digest things and absorb things, that is all connected. And so when we're talking about physical health from a bodywork standpoint as myofascial release therapist, it isn't just about pain, although that does tend to be a really big signal for people. It tends to be the number one thing that they go to or that they get help for when they're experiencing it. But all these other little symptoms usually happen along the way, but aren't necessarily attributed to the same thing.
Hmm. Going beyond just that, there's also your relationship to the food. And what I mean by this is, do you know where it came from? Were you the person who picked it? Were you the person who brought it home and then cooked it?
Mhm.
All of these factors are they're parts of the process from farm to plate, as you know, you like to hear that term,
Mhm.
where someone else interacted potentially with what you're putting into your body for energy and for fuel.
Mhm.
Wherever possible, if you can mindfully take ownership of those parts of the experience and then mindfully eat that food, there seems to be some evidence to support that it improves the way that it is absorbed
Mhm.
and even symptoms of gastric upset after the fact.
Yeah, we actually had a guest recently, Sachin Patel, who mentioned to me once that the intention with which someone is making the food has a lot to do with how it's digested. So, if you are the one making the food and literally pouring love in as an ingredient, like people like to say when they
Mhm.
make these recipes, or maybe the recipes you got from your mother or grandmother, you have this nostalgic feeling about them, and that energy, that positive energy that you're putting into when you're creating this food, you get to then ingest that. And what a wonderful way to nourish your body and give it love in the form of food, by giving it something that you put all of that effort into, knowing that it was going into your own body.
So today we will be speaking with Chef Jordan. Chef Jordan is a James Beard nominated chef, best-selling author, philanthropist, host of the In the Weeds podcast, and psoriasis warrior. Jordan's path to wellness began when he was diagnosed with psoriasis at just 12 years old. On his path to healing, he discovered what so many of our clients know to be true, that healing really is an inside job.
Today, Jordan helps others find their health through anti inflammatory cooking, proving that food can both be medicine and absolutely delicious. His chef table experiences sell out months in advance, and he's passionate about showing people that changing your diet doesn't mean giving up amazing flavors.
Jordan is also a cannabis advocate, and he's deeply committed to giving back, especially to children dealing with mental health challenges and chronic illness.
We're looking forward to getting into all of this today. But before we do that, I want to quickly discuss some of our favorite things that we've had the pleasure of enjoying from Chef Jordan Wagman. Number one on my list is the brownies. He makes an incredible gluten free, dairy free, refined sugar free. All of his food is all of those three things. That is my top number one. And it is the best brownie I've ever had in my life. And I've had a good number of brownies.
One of my favorites is the candied seeds and nuts that are available for snacking when you're at Dimensions, where it's basically just maple syrup that's been fried, and then you put the nuts or seeds in. They become sticky and they take on whatever you're putting on them, cinnamon and it's just delicious. It melts in your mouth, and at the same time, it's not sticky. So, here today to share with us all of his cooking and healing wisdom, we have Chef Jordan. And thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're really excited to get into this conversation with you. And we know you have an incredible story that we would love for you to share with our listeners on how you healed your body through food. So, can you take us back to the beginning? What was happening in your life that led you to discover healing through kind of what you're putting on your plate?
And that's decades. That journey is decades, literally. I was diagnosed with psoriasis, an autoimmune disease, at 12 years old. I call it my Corey Hart years, because I had really cool, at least I thought so, spiked hair at the time.
Mhm.
And I woke up one morning after sleeping at a friend's house, and I found three huge patches of psoriasis on my scalp, two right in the front where my spiked hair clumped together and formed what appeared to be two horns.
Oh, no.
And it was kind of appropriate because I was, I mean, there are a lot of labels these days, but back then I was just a troubled child. I had a really bad temper, and I struggled mightily with my autoimmune disease. And every decision I made in my life subsequent to that diagnosis revolved around my health. And, whether it was I wrote every high school exam in the hospital. I spent a year and a half of my life living in a tent at the Dead Sea, where every day I would wake up and get psoriasis treatments by sitting in the sun 14, 15 hours a day with baby oil, and found reprieve, short term, but I found reprieve. And um, it was, I never, I had always known of Eastern medicine and the availability and but the commitment associated with treating yourself naturally. And I
Mhm.
don't think I was ever ready or prepared to make wholesale changes up until 11 years ago. Now, so I was already into my 40s and have been struggling my whole life. And from this one meeting, with a naturopath, I removed gluten, dairy, and refined sugar from my diet. I call it my lions, tigers, and bears moment, right? Where it's like, gluten, dairy, and refined sugar. Oh my, what the hell am I going to do?
Mhm.
I've classically French trained. I've never made a dessert without butter or cream or sugar or gluten. I've never made sauces. Like I've never cooked without void of those ingredients, right? And so it was a tremendous, it was an eye opener for me. I really, I was humbled that it was food all along in
Mhm.
my entire culinary journey that was negatively impacting me. And in 60 days, 6-0, after I changed my diet, my psoriasis went away. And not for a short period of time, for a long period of time. So I finally realized, the quote unquote cure that every psoriatic or anyone struggles, with a chronic illness looks for, I found.
Mhm.
And so for the last 11 years, almost 12 years now, I'm now, I travel and I consult and I speak to people every day who struggle with an autoimmune disease. It could be an uncle, aunt, brother, sister, whomever, grandparent. And people are looking for ways to heal themselves. And I think what's unique about my discovery, if you will, of this new sort of culinary journey that I'm on is I miss nothing. I
Mhm.
want for nothing. I make ice cream. I make brownies. I eat every dessert I've ever loved in my life and every sauce and everything, but it's made with ingredients that our bodies tolerate. And so I love the journey I'm on, and my newest book reflects it, and that's the food that we serve at Dimensions now, which is another just an amazing addition to my life. So
Amazing. Thank
Mhm.
you so much for sharing that. It is an incredible story.
thank you.
Yeah, and from our own personal experience, we don't have anything nearly as um, drastic to report ourselves, right? But we went through a brief period where we were trying to figure out how to eat in a way that wasn't making our stomachs hurt, that wasn't causing us to have trouble sleeping and feeling joint pain and that sort of thing. So we understand the idea that changing a few things, altering how you do things, can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I discovered that I had a gluten intolerance only about 5 years ago, and I'm in my late 30s now. And looking back, I think I've always had it. I just didn't really, was never really able to put the pieces together because gluten is so omnipresent in food, and in things you don't necessarily think about. Even to this day, I hear people say, "Oh, you can't eat that? Oh, that's strange." And a good example of that being soy sauce. And I discovered that the gluten was creating a lot of obviously abdominal discomfort, but it was also creating other issues like joint pain. And I had this like weird cough that was going on. And it took a long time and a lot of like food elimination and this and that for me to figure it out because I have an enzymatic issue, so I can digest a little bit of it, but I can't digest more than like a tiny bit. And so I could tolerate it, and then so I couldn't really pin it down. But for somebody who has been gluten intolerant and probably her whole life and has figured that out, Eating your food was such a joy, knowing that it was not only clean, but it was for sure gluten free. Because we also have been vegan for a period of our lives too, and so dairy was something that we had cut out completely. And so we can appreciate when something is made really well, because a lot of dairy free options are not great.
They taste dairy free.
Yeah, they do.
It's and things have changed. That things have definitely gotten better at the retail level. But to your point, sugar is omnipresent. It's when I suggest to people that they remove refined sugar, it's not, hey, don't put refined sugar in your coffee. Please don't put refined sugar in your coffee. Use maple syrup.
Yeah.
But it means that you actually have to stop buying packaged goods. It means that you have to buy whole foods and ingredients to make your own food. And I think, you know, for a lot of us, and I put my hand up and include myself in the us, is, if we want to go recreate a recipe, no matter the level of recipe we're trying to recreate, if there are a million ingredients, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And what we've done is, through just years of wanting to eat the food, is just realize that if I want people to recreate it, it has to have 2 ingredients, it has to have 3 ingredients, maximum 5 ingredients. And that's really what our food is about now. And I say our because it's, Chef Nazanin has, to talk about dimensions and to talk about what quote unquote I do is almost a falsehood, because I walk into dimensions, and it's the content I post on social media now. And I'm looking at the food stuff that's created, and I can't create it any better. Like, it's recreated to the point where if you put two in front of me, I made one and the others made one, I would never be able to tell the difference. The other thing is that the food has evolved so much, because now I have other creative minds, Quinn and Tony and Chef Naz, evolving the food. And so it's this amazing brain trust, and I'm so proud of it, and the work that's done. But I'm just so incredibly proud of the evolution of the food.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that firsthand too. Like, even when you're not there, the other chefs are so proud of what they present when they are serving a meal. They clearly take a lot of pride in what they do, just like you do. And what a legacy to have, to be able to have shared that skill and know that it's like easy to replicate.
It's and it's funny you say legacy, because I talk about it and think about legacy often. And for me, it's not accolades, it's not books, it's not awards, it's how did I positively impact people's lives. And that is truly, both from a culinary standpoint and from a health and wellness standpoint, I think I'm doing that. And it's what fills my cup, honestly. Like, that's what makes me happy.
Hmm. So, with that in mind, and this idea that getting to that place where you're changing lives, it's a journey, right? So we've seen firsthand in our practice that healing is an inside job. Can you share what that meant for you practically on your own journey?
Being a part of people's journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, the most things that I am most proud of in my career are things I talk about the least. And I mean that. I talk about my book so often. I'm incredibly proud of it. But if you weigh the other things that I have done, i.e., I lived 8 months, 7.5 months of my life in sick children's hospital. You know, I they changed my life. They were part of my life. They were part of my journey, and I give back. And I cook for kids that are part of what's called PACT, Pediatric Advanced Care Team, who are, I have lost, children up through the process, and I've given them Make a Wish experiences by either. I live in Muskoka now in Northern Ontario, so dropping off food here or going to someone's home and providing the experience. And I mean, it's that's the positively impacting people portion of it that just makes me happy. And so being a part of people's journey is tremendous. And knowing that I made wholesale changes and I was able to do it even though I struggled. I was able to because I am a chef. And yeah, it's much easier for me. However, I think I've reverse engineered, or I'm that reverse magician who
Mhm.
takes the secrets out of cooking and makes it so easy for you to duplicate what it is that you had. Like if you think about the chicken kale meatballs, cherry tomato sauce, and spaghetti squash, there's 5 ingredients in that entire dish, and it's served everywhere. I could serve that in any restaurant, and I could serve that. I serve it. I love it. It's one of my favorite food stuff. But it's the technique. It's how you manipulate or treat the ingredients. Like Quinn learned, the difference between a chicken kale meatball where the ground chicken is strained versus ground chicken that isn't creates a completely different product. Same ingredients, same number of ingredients, but the technique is what differentiates our food stuff, because it is so simple in application and in number of ingredients, but it is always about the technique. And that's what we do through my cooking classes, through the culinarians at Dimensions, and everyone else that's, of ethos I'm a part of.
Amazing. I want to talk about that recipe specifically because it is
Hmm.
amazing. We were
Hmm.
so lucky to have been part of his cooking class when we were at Dimensions last. And it is the simplest recipe. It is a beautiful chicken kale meatball with spaghetti squash and a very simple tomato sauce. And it blew our minds how easy it was to make, how delicious it was, and full of nutrients. And then, like you said, we cooked it for some friends of ours when we were visiting their cottage up north, and they loved it so much. And when we showed them what was in it, they really couldn't believe it. Like you said about the tomato sauce, they could not believe there was not cream in it. And to this day, they still ask me, "It's just the tomatoes and salt and pepper and olive oil? That's it?"
But it's the technique, and that's if you cook that cherry tomato sauce uncovered, it wouldn't yield the same consistency. It wouldn't have the same flavor profile, and it's just something as simple as a pot with a tight fitting lid.
Yes.
And that's the truth. I am so incredibly proud. There was a year of my life where it was very cathartic for me. I wrote a blog once a week and released a recipe each week. The chicken kale meatball was a byproduct of, when you create a meatball, when you create a meatloaf, when you use ground meat, especially lean or ground meat, you want to include what's called a panade, right? So this, it's breadcrumbs and cream and it could be, challah or brioche or whatever it is, some sort of egg bread, but any bread mixed with milk or cream to create a paste. And what it does is it gives the texture, adds this amazing texture. It's not as much as it's the binder as much as it provides this amazing texture. Well, it's only until recently, in the last couple of years, did I create buckwheat bread that I was really proud of. So I never had the use of a breadcrumb. So I had to come up with something that could act as that panade. How do I incorporate moisture and texture and flavor clearly, without diluting the meatball itself? Because if you added spinach instead of kale, it wouldn't work. If you add leaves of kale, it doesn't work. So I created something where I was frying kale one day. And if you can believe that almost every recipe that we use at Dimensions, almost every recipe that I've created has been done so by accident. And it's just the way it is, like trial and error, but just by accident more than anything. And I was frying kale one day. It was one of my favorite ingredients to fry, where you chiffonade thin little ribbons of kale and you deep fry them. And I thought one day, okay, this doesn't have a ton of moisture. What if I incorporate it into the chicken or ground turkey? And through trial and error, I learned how to strain the ground meat and adding 50-50. And that's what the recipe is. Here it is: 50%, chiffonade of kale as finely, as thinly as you can slice it, with equal amounts of ground chicken and salt and pepper. And that's it. And the cherry tomato sauce is exactly the same. It's just based on a really simple emulsion. So by adding cherry tomatoes in a pot, cherry tomatoes, warm water, get rid of all those impurities, rinse off that water, add a little bit of oil on the bottom of the saucepan, and just enough to cover the saucepan. And that's going to create that emulsion with the cherry tomato sauce or juice, that as this steams, as the cherry tomatoes steam, they start to split and exude all their liquid. And so once that mixture is completely sort of covered with water, right? All the tomatoes exude all their juice. That mixture is entirely covered with water. You put it into a blender with salt and pepper and you emulsify it on really high RPM, suspending the water and the oil, right? And creating that amazing creamy texture. And boom, it's like, when I tell you that the number of messages that I received from people in Toronto who recreated it, it was mind blowing to me. And it was an epiphany. That's when I finally learned where, Jordan, it's get out of your own way. Stop creating recipes that have 10 ingredients. No one cares. No one cares. They might like your food, but no one's going to recreate the food. And it all changed.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done those like meal kit boxes before. What you're describing, that recipe, is more difficult than one of those, and nothing has made me feel more like I'm driving a Ferrari in the kitchen than scooping out the seeds from the squash and then immediately frying those seeds after having toasted my cinnamon, and like the whole thing, just having 4 pans going, and it's so much fun. Absolutely.
You feel like a rock star, right? But and because of the ease, it's the confidence inevitably that makes you feel that way, right? And that is, for me, you asked me about how it makes me feel to be a part of people's journeys, to give them confidence, whether it's a cook, a home cook, a chef. That's the reward, honestly. Like, that is legacy, that's reward. And to know be passed on to others forevermore, to know that you will continue sharing that recipe, means everything in the world to me.
So glad.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had Donald Curry from Dimensions, the director of Dimensions, on an episode previously, and he mentioned to us while we were chatting about the food, actually, that it's just getting better, which I'm not totally sure how that's possible, but he said it, so I believe him. I'm just curious how you initially became connected with Dimensions, and what about their mission and vision really resonated with you?
Listen, I can't overstate this. The values are so aligned that I have given my entire being, my brand, something I've worked on for over 30 plus years, to be a part of this. And I am all in. Like, and it says, that says everything to me. I got on the radar. A friend of mine, Val, who's a headhunter, she was in touch, and truth is that they were originally not looking for a Jordan Wagman. They were looking for an executive chef, and that's not me. I'm not an executive chef. I don't want to be employed by someone 100% of the time. I want to be able to have fractional roles. And, although Dimensions is a huge part of my life, it is one of a few things that I do. And when I was introduced to Joanne and Chris, and we went for lunch, I immediately said, I just need to be a part of this. From the cannabis component, which is a huge part of my life, and to the health and wellness component, and the need for an anti-inflammatory diet. And when you speak of Donald Curry, it's like this. It's like the skies open up and the angels sing, "Oh," because he's that guy. He's that guy that I have all the time in the world for, and his words mean a lot to me. And the reason is because I have a lot of respect for him, but he was the person driving for me to be a part of it. And what happened was, I sold them on this. I now live up north. I live on 118. The resort The retreat is on 118.
Yep.
It just happens to be on the other side. I live in Muskoka. It's an hour away.
Mhm.
And I think inevitably, and this is sort of, just something that I've done from a business standpoint to differentiate myself. I've explained to different companies that you don't need to hire an executive chef. You need to hire a Jordan Wagman who can be that sort of pillar of consistency, if you will, that doesn't matter who the chef is. Chef Nazanin Arabani has become one of the best cooks that I have ever had the chance to work with. Now, do I hope that they stay at Dimensions forever? Of course. Is it likely? No, of course not. I'm going to encourage them to leave at some point in time because, that they need to go and move on and sort of spread their wings. But the food will never change because it's things that I will continue to teach, and Quinn and Tony and everyone sort of move up and that's what we're looking for and that's what I'm offering people up north is this level of consistency. And I think that it's working. And truth be told, Dimensions is the proof of concept after, a year and a half, whatever it is. So um, I I have fallen in love with this place. Dimensions is the most special place, the most special property on Maple Lake in, Algonquin Highlands. And the cabins are first class, and every time I'm on site, I stay there. So I have spent number of nights on site, thousands of hours in the kitchen, but a number of nights on site, and it is first class. The food, I'll be honest, I am fortunate to be able to go in and eat the food. I'm fortunate to be able to go in and pop in and say good morning. They say, "Hi, chef. Can we make you something?" And the truth is, it's like, not make me something. I want to eat what the guests are eating. And I'm blown away each and every time.
Mhm.
And it's just that's Dimensions in a nutshell. The people are phenomenal. The place is phenomenal. It's just 5 stars across the board.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, we're just wondering, when it comes to menu planning, um, is there anything that you'd say is different when you're planning specifically for guests that are there to feel informed versus, let's say, your own menu planning at home
Or a
um,
dinner party.
yeah, yeah.
So it's I love that question. The truth is that all the food that you eat at Dimensions is the food that I make every day at home.
Mm.
I have brownies sitting in the fridge. I have peanut butter caramel sitting in the fridge. I have granola. Like I have everything, and because that's the food I love to eat. Um, I I I I think the food at Dimensions is different, if I can say it this way, and I've never said this out loud before, but it does make sense. It's so different because it's the same. It's so different because it's so familiar.
Mm.
It's we create the same familiar food that you know and love, right? Cashew ice cream, like ice cream, but made from cashews and coconut milk. And so really it's that's the differentiator for us is being able to appease those, we have we treat a very sensitive demographic sometimes, and people rely on food for comfort.
Mhm.
And I think what we're able to do is transcend the need for offering that and sort of appease that need by offering the exact food that they crave, but with the ingredients that their body tolerates and a natural path would approve of.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Make
there's a lot to
sense?
that. Yeah, exactly. It does make sense because I think when I think of, like, for example, a fine dining experience, I am a little intimidated by that because there would be a lot of ingredients that I would actually not even know what they are.
Mm.
But when I had my first experience eating your food at Dimensions, it was, I think you called it a flight of tacos, or tacos seven different ways. You said something like that. And tacos are my all-time favorite food. So it was really exciting for me. And then I came home and told Justin, he was super jealous.
That experience, I'll be honest with you, that was born out of my need and love for tacos. I say it as honest as I can be. Tacos became a love language. It's actually how my girlfriend, I was with my wife for 31 years. We separated. I have two older children, and I very quickly fell in love. And I think she fell in love with my tortillas long before me. That might be the truth, actually. But tortillas became my bread because I
Mm,
couldn't. I didn't have the knowledge base yet enough to be able to create a bread that I loved. So tortillas became my bread. And that menu, that experience was truly born of my need for empanadas, my need for tostadas, for tortillas, for sopes, for all of it.
Mhm. Yeah,
amazing. And I
and
got to benefit, so
yeah,
thank
definitely.
you.
And for anybody listening at home, you might not have caught it, but it was really important when Chef Jordan was said, "We treat,"
Mhm.
right? So food is medicine.
Yes.
Food can definitely be medicine.
Yeah.
And
And the
there's
way
more
that
than just Chef
yeah.
Jordan. It's not the Chef Jordan show at all. It's never been about me. It's more about, just the whole team, really.
Of
It is the greater we.
mhm.
Yeah. You're creating way more than just food, we know at Dimensions. You're creating an entire healing experience. And for people who are suffering from chronic pain, like we treat often, or inflammation, we know that inflammation is a big piece of pain. So if you had to offer us, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, 5 non negotiable cooking tips for somebody who's looking to adopt an anti inflammatory diet and support their healing, what might those be?
It's so interesting because, I'm very specific with some of the verbiage, but I hardly use the word the best. I believe in my opinion, and you're the professionals. I'm just a guy that puts food on a plate. I will say that I take pride in an anti-inflammatory approach to food stuff. The number one thing for me is knowing your ingredients and having a relationship with those who create ingredients or grow ingredients. And the fact that my farmer, Dan Kreismer from Port Severn, delivers to my house once a week on Thursdays, and I know it's literally like there's lettuce sitting in there, it's 2 weeks later. Literally, it could have been, my girlfriend, Corey said, should we use that romaine tonight? Or, I'm like, no, we'll use that. She asked if it was still good. I'm like, of course, the roots are still intact. It's sitting in water and it's completely alive for all intents and purposes. So it's knowing your ingredients and where they come from. That would be number one. Number two is, it's make incremental changes. Don't make wholesale changes because it's not achievable. It was achievable for me, and hard, but achievable. Even with trial and error. Like, if I tell you the first, things that I made, it was like purely coconut oil. Like, I hardly even use coconut oil anymore, but I didn't have the knowledge base. I didn't have the experience. So, certainly, knowing your ingredients would be number one. I would definitely talk about um, proper cooking techniques, and so I talk about sear deglaze rest all the time. And sear deglaze rest is kind of like that trifecta of, if you are cooking animal proteins, you sear in a hot pan, you remove from said pan, and you rest, typically on a grate, so it's not sitting in its own juices, but it's on a plate, it's on a plate. But you let it rest, and you deglaze the pan. As many often see, culinarians will lift a pan from the stove and add, wine or cognac or whatever it is. I add water. I mean, I talk about my accessibility, or making the recipes accessible. That is part and parcel with it. I want you to know that you can just open up your tap and deglaze with water. And what the water does is, after you seared something, chicken kale meatballs, for example, you have all this beautiful, my favorite four-letter F word, second, fond, Fond, right? And so fond are those little bits of food that get stuck to the bottom of the pan, and the water lifts it up and creates an amazing sauce. So you're searing in a hot pan, you're deglazing, but this is the most important sort of trick when it comes to cooking animal proteins, especially, the meat side rather than the fish side, would be resting. And resting is removing that steak from the pan and allowing that steak to rest for 30 to 50% of its cooking time. And that allows very quickly for the juices to disperse, which are, going sort of running for the border, running for the inside as that meat or as that protein is being subjected to heat, all the juices running to the inside. And if you prematurely cut it, all that juice is on the bottom of the plate. If you allow it to rest for 30 to 50% of its cooking time, you're allowing all that juice to disperse. So when you slice it, it's fully intact and encased in the meat where it belongs. Those are top three.
Amazing.
Amazing.
What are some easy swaps that our listeners can make in their grocery order if they're looking to reduce gluten, sugar, or dairy, and therefore inflammation in their diet? And like you said, they're trying to start small.
Yeah, great question. It's those incremental changes, right? So you make very small changes at a time. And so maple syrup for white sugar is the first that I recommend to people. If you're using white sugar or sugar in your coffee every day, don't stop using a sweetener. Don't just add cream or add milk. Start slow and just replace that white sugar or any sugar with maple syrup. Start there. In a couple of days, remove that dairy and go and buy one of these foamers for $20-$30 on Amazon or whatever they are, and buy an alternate milk and one that's not with flavoring, because any flavoring adds sugars, and go for something that's without those hidden sugars and foam that. That's what I do. I make my own oat milk, which doesn't really foam, or I'll buy something that tends to have some starches, or gums, and look, if God strike me down if these are my if those are my cheats, right? But I would start with replacing white sugar with maple syrup for sure. That would be number one. The other ingredients, and if I took you on a tour of my pantry or my drawers, it's really that I have ingredients. I don't have finished product. I don't have shake and bake. I have breadcrumbs that I've ground up, from my buckwheat bread. I don't have, and I'm trying cereal, for example, or granola. So I have oats, I have pumpkin seeds, I have cacao nibs, I have maple syrup. And it's really about trying to find these recipes that work for you, using very few ingredients that you know and love. But I would really just talk about the removal of sugar, number one, and then the slow practice and integration of whole foods and not finished products. I think that's where you start. The truth of the matter is, the other side of it is, if you eat out a lot, and I think you mentioned this already, um, there's so much hidden in there. And that's inevitably my challenge with eating out, that unless it's with a friend or at a friend's who knows that I'm coming and will in one way or another navigate my dietary restrictions to a certain extent, I really can't go out to eat all that often, unless I'm signing up for a stomach ache or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But I know you relate. So I would just talk about not eating out as much and making your own food and asking the right questions. And I say this to your audience. I say it to every person that cooks with me, I think, as you know, because you reached out to me. Um, I'm always available to answer questions. My time is free of charge because I want people to grow and evolve, and that's my influence. That's the legacy. But I just want people to make those changes. So those that's kind of where I would be for
Yeah.
those three.
I love the advice too that you've given, like for somebody who is wanting to make a change or is thinking about it but hesitating a little bit, understanding that they have a resource, but also that it doesn't take a lot. You can start really small. I think that's a big piece of legacy. But on the topic of legacy, I know that you have some philanthropic efforts that you really pour your heart into that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. Can you tell us a little bit more about that with respect to the work you do on the board for the school that you attended as a child?
Yeah, I mean, look, those are the things I just do. I feel like I'm 53 years old. I think I'm fortunate to be on this earth. I think my life could have gone in many ways. The school you're speaking of is called the Jerome D. Diamond Adolescent Center, and I attended it when I was 16 years old. I wasn't failing out of school by any stretch. I was just emotionally um, stunted. Or scarred, not stunted, scarred, because I think I've been always pretty emotionally mature, but I didn't know what to do with all my feelings. Now I have a guitar sitting here, and anytime I'm angry or depressed or upset or whatever, I pick up my guitar and I feel better. Back then, when I was a kid, I would punch a wall, and so when I graduated there, um, graduated is a term I would use very loosely. They didn't want me to leave. No one wanted me to leave. I said, I'm out of here. And that was me graduating. But, sometimes, when the tools are in your toolbox, and they were. And yeah, I've sat on the board for a number of years, and I don't anymore. And I just, every book that I've published, they've received the first copy, because the truth of the matter is, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my experience. Things that I do or things that I'm part of make me emotional. It's just who I am. And I just like giving back. Giving back to the school is easy, right? When you look at kids who are 13 years old, 15 years, 16 years old, and they're looking at you, and you introduce themselves. And actually, the kitchen that was built in the school was my old classroom. And I talk about this often, is how, these are not, I'm not just an old dude who's coming to cookie brownies, like, oh, teacher, I'm not that guy. Like, that's just, I'm an old dude. Let's be straight. Like, I get it now. Like, I look at myself in the camera, and it's all white. It's crazy. But I'm looking at these students, and I'm them. And they're looking at me, and there's this connection, because listen, I've struggled with mental health my whole life. To say that I wasn't, I was never at a point where I wanted to take my life, ever. But I can tell you that that thought was always present, when I was really depressed. And finally, my friend took his own life a couple of years ago, and my brother and I forced, there's four of us, but my brother Ryan and I, we both struggle with mental health. We have our whole life. It's a huge part of my identity. And we call ourselves mental health survivors now, not mental health advocates, because we're surviving the battle. But that's what the Jerome D. Diamond Adolescent Center taught me. It taught me that it's my journey, and that we're all individuals, and that whether it's ingredients impacting our diet and what should you replace and we're all individuals, like with cannabinoids and cannabis, like we're just all individuals. So, for me, being a part of that school was everything. And my journey has been defined by my 1 year at that school. They receive every first copy of my book that's ever been published. They receive the first copy. Sometimes I just leave it on the stoop. But that place means the world to me.
Amazing. And I love that you are able to share those emotions and be vulnerable like that with us, because as people who have treated a lot of individuals who've experienced incredible trauma in their lives, it's something that is so normal in our society to push down those emotions and not allow them to come through as they come through, or stuff them away. And so we're constantly in the process of teaching our clients that it's okay to feel those emotions and let them come up, and let your body process through them so they don't get stuck in there.
And I think that that's what makes me relatable. I'll be totally honest. There's just so many people who struggle, and there's not one culinarian that I interview who, for a position that doesn't struggle. And I think they're very, because they're smart and do some due diligence before we meet, and they see my connection with mental health, and that, I'm just another dude who's struggling, right? Like all of us do. And I have a lot of good days, mostly good days, for the last many years. I have really good days, but that has a lot to do with my diet. I will maintain, no question about it. Changing my diet gave me my physical health, but I found my mental health. I really did. There's no question about that. But yeah, I believe really strongly in talking about both the health from a physical and mental standpoint.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for being on the show. We have one of your books here with us for those of you who are listening in, or sorry,
That's awesome.
I just held the book.
You have to leave that one in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But it is right side up now. The book is called How I Found My Health Through Food, and Chef Jordan was lovely enough to sign it for us. And it has the recipes, some of the recipes we've been talking about on the show today. Some of my favorites, including the brownie, which is, again, my all-time favorite dessert. So I think we have a lot in common there.
Who doesn't love a great brownie?
So we will add the links to where you can find this book and all of Chef Jordan's other books in the links in our description of the show in the replay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Nellen here from the Fascia Fix. Have you been putting yourself on the back burner for years? Maybe it's starting to show. You feel older than you are and completely disconnected from your body. Let's fix that. Join us for a weekend retreat at Dimensions Algonquin Highlands, October 11th to 13th for our 3-day Fascia Flow retreat. Enjoy first-class accommodations and fine dining with Chef Jordan Wagman's team while you reconnect to yourself and learn the tools you need to elevate your healing journey. Visit our website, dropintohealing.com, for more information.
You've been listening to The Fascia Fix with Nellen and Justin Krull. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, DM us at MyoFascial Canada on Instagram or TikTok. Thanks for listening.